Hello, welcome to AQS Inmate Call, and I'm your host, Joel Wilborn. Now, one of the things I do as a prison reformist is I want to try to reduce the prison population and quite possibly reduce prisons across the United States. And one way to do that is to affect their budget. If we don't fund these Department of Corrections as much as we've been doing in the past, they'll have to find more creative ways to take care of the prisoners that they have. And that could be finding alternative ways to incarcerate a person, like the home monitoring system, or maybe some kind of monitored or watched over probation or parole process, where they can go to treatment centers and get credit for good time or something like that for working on their mental wellness or whatever it was that caused them to get into this destructive state in the first place. Now, there's all kinds of things, even things I can't even imagine, that can be done. But if they have this unlimited budget out there and they're just being bombarded with money, they'll be building prisons and locking people up and just kind of skimping on the resources. And correction centers are supposed to be designed to do that, but let's face it, they're not. People are going in bad and coming out badder, as one of the inmates told me in an interview I had. So I look at the best way to spend our money. And Idaho is a good example of a crisis that can be, I'm not going to say easily fixed, but something that's going to draw attention to the population. And I hope the people of Idaho realize that if this thing isn't handled in a acceptable manner, there could be a lot of problems in the future. Judges shouldn't just hit the gavel, strike the gavel on the desk and say, you're in prison for 6 years. There has to be more to it. We have to try to figure out, I think the first thing that people should look at is how can we fix this situation, or at least curtail it or slow it down or put it away without sending a person to prison. And if people start concentrating on that, like maybe prison is the last resort or jail is the last resort, we might be able to handle this. I don't know. We won't know until we try. Now, Idaho is a state facing a correctional system stretched past its limits and a budget struggling to keep up. Idaho Department of Corrections, or IDOC, is confronting a perfect storm: overcrowded prisons, rising operational costs, and looming budget cuts that could reshape public safety across the state. Now let's dig into what's happening, why it matters, and what comes next. Every year, state agencies appear before Idaho's Joint Finance Appropriations Committee to justify their budgets. This year, IDOC Director Bree Derrick faced some of the toughest questions yet. Idaho's prison capacity sits at about 8,232 beds, but the incarcerated population has surged to over 10,000 people. That means Idaho is housing roughly 1,800 more people than its prisons can hold. To close the gap, the state is paying to house 1,249 people in county jails and 581 people in out-of-state facility in Arizona. $100 per person per day. And that's just the start. Director Derrick told lawmakers that inflation has hit the prison system hard. Even basic supplies, toilet paper, paper towels, have jumped 25 to 26% in cost over the last few years. Meanwhile, the population spike is unlike anything IDOC has seen before. Under the governor's recommendations, the budget for county and out-of-state placements is set to grow over 69%. Idaho may need a $15.2 million supplemental payment just to cover this year's overflow housing cost. And another $25 million is proposed for next year. This isn't a temporary bump, it's a structural strain. As if the overcrowding and rising costs weren't enough, Idaho is also facing a broader state budget crunch. Lawmakers have asked agencies to prepare for additional 2% cuts, and the consequences could be severe. Internal documents show that IDOC may be forced to furlough more than 1,200 prison staff, reducing staffing by 19 hours every 2 weeks. IDOC officials warn that this would compromise safety, disrupt essential services, increase legal and fiscal risk for the state. And it's not just corrections. Idaho State Police could also face furloughs and even the elimination of its SWAT team if cuts continue. All of this is happening against the backdrop of years of tax cuts that reduced state revenue by $4 billion, according to the Idaho Center for Fiscal Policy. Legislators want answers and relief for county jails that are also bursting at the seams. Senator Phil Hart pressed Director Derrick on how Idaho compares to neighboring states. Her answer: Idaho has historically ranked the top 15 nationally for incarceration rates. County commissioners across the state are pleading for help. IDOC says it plans to expand contracts with counties that have new or additional infrastructure and is even considering more out of state placements. But these are stopgaps, not solutions. When a prison system runs over capacity, the risks ripple outward. You have staff burnout, increased violence, higher medical costs, legal exposure, strain on county governments, and long-term financial instability. Idaho is now at crossroads. The state can continue patching holes, or it can confront the deeper issues driving incarceration and capacity. Idaho's corrections budget crisis isn't just a story about numbers, it's a story about people. Incarcerated individuals, correctional officers, county governments, and taxpayers, all caught in a system stretched beyond its limits. As lawmakers debate the next budget, the stakes couldn't be higher. This kind of information needs to be shared with the public. They need to understand, and I can't emphasize this enough, incarcerated people, they're humans. Correctional officers, they're humans. State lawmakers, they're human too. They have issues just like the rest of us. Like I mentioned before in a previous podcast, the superintendent for the Washington Correction Center for Women, she was moved out of her position because she abused her privilege as the superintendent, meaning she was allowing one of the prisoners to be abused because she had a personal grudge against this person. Now, these things pop up in prisons. These things pop up in government. People have their own personal issues and they have their debates that they go on with, and they're trying to survive in this crazy world. We have to take that into consideration. You overcrowd a prison, it's going to cause some stress and it's going to cause some conflict, and somebody could possibly get hurt. We don't want that. I mean, right now we've got people that want to defund law enforcement. How do you think we can survive with a stressed out, reduced law enforcement team? Even the DOC team is going to suffer these things. So I'm just asking that when budgets come up and people are talking about cutting things, I personally don't mind them cutting the DOC, but we have to come up with something that will work. And when we start grabbing our pitchforks and running out, telling everybody to lock these people up, there's consequences. We have to pay for that. $100 a day to house these inmates in other facilities in other states. and in jails. Why do we do that? Why not just put them out in society where they can pay taxes? Now, every one of these inmates, 1,000 or so, they're not all violent criminals. A lot of them are for drugs, possession, or paraphernalia and stuff because Idaho is really strict on the drug use. And so we have various reasons that people commit crimes, various crimes, and various mental states. And we have to look at all of that whenever we lock these people up. That's all I'm asking. Well, thanks for listening to AQS Inmate Call. And if you found this episode helpful, share it with someone who cares about how policy shapes real lives. And until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.